Welcome everyone to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. It's your host Travis and Jon. Jon, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. A good workout this morning, about an hour of shoveling snow.
Oh yeah, I saw him out there, and I was like, man, I can't wait to have Charles go out there, my teenager, and do the same thing.
Yeah, nothing makes me feel as old as when I'm shoveling snow.
Why is that?
Because about like 10, 15 minutes into it, the lower back just starts giving. I mean, it's got to be like horrible posture shoveling snow.
Yeah, you're like bent over.
Yeah, there's no good way to do it.
Yeah, it's not like a deadlift where you can have proper positioning and then.
Yeah. It helps if I find a good podcast to listen to.
What were you listening to this morning when you're doing it?
Man, you're going to try to make me butcher that name?
No, we'll talk about it later.
I don't even want to try to butcher that name.
Was it a good episode?
It was good. I listened to a couple. It was pretty good.
That's good. Yeah, today we want to talk about something that Jon and I feel like has been kind of changing or been a little bit more prominent in the jiu-jitsu community, and we wanted to give 10 examples that we see how the correlation between the two go. Jon, what are we going to talk about today?
Philosophy and jiu-jitsu. Just like, I don't even know if I don't think it's anything new. I just think it's more of an awareness, or maybe some of the athletes that everyone follows, they're getting up there in their years, late 30s, early 40s, and we were kind of joking about it earlier. Is everyone's heard the term midlife crisis, right? Like, I don't think people are having a midlife crisis. I just think their experiences leading up to about that time frame, they start looking at life a little differently, and maybe they start making choices in their life that other people are like, "Wow, is that person going through a midlife crisis?" I don't think so. I just think they realize, maybe you start getting repassionate about hobbies that you let go when you're in your 20s and 30s, and maybe you're raising a family and you didn't have time to pursue those. And then once you get into your mid 40s or so, normally your kids are grown and they're moving out, and then you have the time to pursue those hobbies that you had to give up.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we mentioned before in the podcast, and I've mentioned too. Like, I definitely have looked at jiu-jitsu in a more intellectual / philosophical way in how we do things and the mentality that we approach jiu-jitsu. And it's been interesting for me, as I get older. Also, like Jon mentioned, I'm only 33, but I have 3 kids. I've got a good career. I did time in the military, so I feel like I'm a little bit beyond my years based on my life experience. But since looking at jiu-jitsu more in like these philosophical ways, it definitely has changed my appreciation for the sport and the gentle art of folding people in their clothes. And, I just kind of want to share it with you guys how we see these 10 things in our journey, and just looking from the outside in on other people and how things have become more pronounced and prominent to us as we look at it through this, more of a mature, I guess that we would say we're just more of a mature look on the scope of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, for sure.
So Jon, let's go ahead and jump into number one. What's number one, the example of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu philosophy?
So developing a nonviolent approach to conflict resolution. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teaches practitioners to be aware of their environment, the situations around them, allowing them to de-escalate tensions before they become physical. And that's spot on, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think after you do jiu-jitsu for a while, once your ego's crushed, but you start getting that confidence in yourself on handling yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
I just think you're more at peace, which means when you're out in town or you're out in public and, you got some jerk, or, you're at a Seahawks game and all the fans are assholes, it's just easier to accept. And, you just know what not what environment you want to be in, what environment you don't want to be in, and who you want to be surrounded by.
Completely agree. We mentioned this before we started recording about how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or just training martial arts in general, I think Jon hit it nail on the head with the humbling part. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu constantly humbles you. So I think when you go out in town and you're in these, high stress environments, or you're in these situations where, someone might be trying to start a fight or get a little aggressive, because we're constantly humbled and we know our limitations and we know what our limitations and where we excel, it's a lot easier to be calm when someone else is, about to see red. You're like,
go ahead and see it.
You're like, all right, man, whatever. Look, I don't really want to fight you. Let's just go our separate ways. This is a lose-lose for both of us, no matter what. So, it's just, you become a lot more level-headed and aware of violence is not the answer because we practice. It sounds kind of cheesy, but because we practice violence on each other for fun, and people compete and whatnot. So when we look at conflict, we're like, look, dude, it's not worth it. Like I don't want to fight you. You win. I'm good. Like the Gracies talk about it, Jocko talk about it. You know what I mean? Like you win. It's whatever you want out of this situation, you win. I'm good. But it's nice knowing that if someone does put their hands on you or gets to the point where you do feel you need to, resolve it physically, that hopefully because of your jiu-jitsu or whatever other martial arts you do, you have a little bit more confidence in it.
Yeah, and if you ask me, like, how do I tie that into philosophy? Well, normally, a student of philosophy, you're training. You're not an animal. You're not a base animal. It trains you to think about smart decisions, how to master your emotions, your control, how to accept the way other people are acting. And I feel like that's how that ties into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like, when you're getting smashed by that, 250-pound monster, accept that situation, You got to be calm, rational. You're not some wild animal that's just going to start thrashing around and hurting people.
Yep.
I feel like that's how those two tie together for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. For number 2, it is learning to understand and accept loss. Man, if this is not true. Look, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu requires practitioners to accept defeat, helping them develop an understanding of importance of resilience in the face of adversity, is what our little thing says. And it's completely true. Like, your whole first, 6 months are a majority of what you think are going to be losses, right? There are victories in there, an understanding a technique, applying a technique, lasting without being submitted. Those are all victories, but you definitely, for the typical person that isn't like a former D1 wrestler or a natural athlete, it's typically a lot of loss, a lot of not understanding what's going on. And man, you build a resilience to failure. Like, you learn to just accept it. Now, that's not to say everyone's perfect. I still go through when I lose, whether it's I get submitted by someone or I can't get a technique and I feel like I really am trying my hardest. We're not perfect. I still have those moments. John still has those moments. Everyone still has those moments where loss sucks and you're like, gosh, dang it, man. Like, this sucks. But I think because you're so used to losing, you're already approaching it at a different perspective than when you first started.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly,
Excuse me.
I think that loss will change for you, the longer you do it. Like, for me, I don't know. I think I probably had that mentality for 2 years. I didn't want to get submitted. That was a loss. But then you come to the realization when you're playing that way or you're learning that way, you're not really putting yourself out there and trying, trying techniques that you wouldn't normally, because you're being so defensive.
Yeah.
And that's really where the loss happens. You're losing out on those opportunities with that fear of, I'm going to get submitted and I'm going to lose.
Yeah. And your views of what losing also change. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like you used to think like getting submitted is a loss.
Right.
I don't really see that as a loss anymore unless it's, me really trying hard and I get submitted. But one thing that it goes into also is, where are you losing? Are you losing in competition or are you losing in class? Because there's not really losing in class.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that's a very big thing that people kind of get focused on too much at the beginning of their journey. Like, they go to class and they don't submit anyone. They get submitted the whole time, or they get crushed, or whatever their scenario is, and they view that as a loss. But it's not, because you're in the training room. You're learning jiu-jitsu. You're trying to better yourself. Those aren't losses, okay? The training room doesn't really. It matters, and you want to be successful in training, but you shouldn't take it as win or lose. Like, it's more of like a success or learning. Did you do something successful? Did you apply a technique and get it? That's awesome. Did you not do it? Well, okay, why didn't it work? Just learn to accept loss in the sense of, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to have these victories that you think you're gonna, but you're gonna build so much resilience from it. And it goes into life too, right?
Yeah, I think, tying that into philosophy, like you said, tying that into life, people have loved ones that die, friends that die. You have
point.
loss all through your personal life. And, normally when that happens, you sit back and you reflect on that individual, what they meant to you,
Yeah.
The important parts they had in your life. And, you can kind of go the same way with jiu-jitsu, right? You reflect, you look at what's going on, what's happening. Like, if I'm going to reflect over the last 5 years of my journey with jiu-jitsu, what were the great points, what were the low points? But at the end, you'll find out like how it was valuable to you and what you found important during that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And that should be like a little memoir, like an opening. John, what's our third one of the first 5?
Let's see. We got fostering a sense of discipline and respect. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu encourages practitioners to practice respect towards their opponents and their instructors, helping them to develop the discipline to listen and follow instructions. And that's very true, right?
Yeah.
Something about when everyone has to embrace the suck together, when you're in, when everyone's getting smashed, you'll learn to respect your partner and the people that you're training with because they're going through the exact same thing you are.
Yeah, completely agree.
And, most people understand, they don't want to get hurt. They don't want to get injured. You're going to respect your teammate that way. And for those that are that haven't grasped that concept yet, they'll probably find their mats a little lonely when they can't have anyone to partner with.
Yep. Today's episode of Elbows Tight Podcast is brought to you by the Amino Co. John, go ahead and tell the listeners at home a little bit about Amino Co.
So I'm using Heal. It's to help with recovery. It's 100% science-backed. What I like about it is it triggers lean muscle growth and repair 4 times more efficiently than any other protein source. It reduces muscle atrophy and improves physical function after surgery. It helps maintain a healthy inflammatory response by acting mTOR. I highly recommend everyone go to Amino Co., look it up online, check out the science-backed details. It's all there. So far, I really like it. It tastes great. It mixes easy, and I'm looking forward to using it for a couple months.
If you guys want to check out Heal and check out the science, go to aminoco.com/elbowstight. Once again, that is aminoco.com/elbowstight and use code elbowstight at checkout for 30% off. Every new purchase does get a free gift as well. Thank you, Amino Co., for sponsoring this episode. Yeah, the biggest piece of respect and discipline that jiu-jitsu teaches you is, that should be understood, is tapping. Like, there is so much respect that goes into someone submitting to you that it cannot be broken, man. I feel like if you, and maybe I've done it, maybe John's done it, maybe held on to a submission too long, or we're just so hyper-focused on the moment of the submission or a position, we might overlook a tap or might be late to release on a tap or something like that. That's a little bit different. Now, if you're just being a jerk and you just... Prime example, John, like we mentioned, if his shoulder starts going in the wrong position, he's going to submit before it even gets there, right? And John's looking at that other person for the respect of, hey, I have submitted to you. It doesn't matter if you feel that it was a inferior position or whatever. I'm showing you the discipline and respect of saying like, hey, please show me the same in letting go of what we're doing right now. And there's so much value in that. And one thing we talk about too, why jiu-jitsu is great for kids, is it teaches you discipline and respect because it's someone outside of your household. There's someone outside of the parents or a family member that are teaching your kid to listen, be accountable, discipline. You can't be lollygagging, joking around, not trying in class because now you're wasting people's time. And I think jiu-jitsu does that and teaches that beautifully,
Yeah, how do you tie that to philosophy, Travis? Can you give me something there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, let's hear it.
Discipline and philosophy. Discipline and respect through martial arts completely tie into how you view yourself also. Because if you develop your discipline and respect through a martial art, you're going to look at yourself differently. So if you have the discipline to go to class 2-3 times a week, there's benefit in that for you. So you're going to be disciplined in knowing, hey, if I do this, my skill's going to improve. I'm going to respect myself a lot more because I'm giving myself a goal and I'm treating that goal as something that I want to do. And that ties into life because you're going to start looking at every other aspect of your life and how can you achieve something through, what you're learning on the mat philosophically, not necessarily like physical, right? So if you want to start dieting because you want to get better at jiu-jitsu is helping you with that discipline in being a better person in a diet, or being a better person through helping your family members or things like that. Like, it just completely ties over. As me as a father, the discipline that I learned and the respect that I've learned through jiu-jitsu helps me be a better father because I'm more level-headed. I look at my family a little bit differently. I don't know. It's just, that's kind of how it ties into life for me.
Yeah, and when I think about it, like discipline and respect, right? Some of my friends, we totally have difference of opinions on politics, right? But what I enjoy is I can have a conversation with them, a very philosophical conversation on politics, and I can be respectful of their opinion. I think a lot of that's missing. I think a lot of people, especially in this country, they can't have a conversation.
Yeah, people get so hot-headed about
hot
topics.
Without removing emotion.
Yeah.
And just having a respectful conversation where you highlight your points and you can discuss it.
Yeah.
I think that could tie in very well there.
Yeah, prime example, John and I just went through this, last week. John came over, and I like watching people play video games. It's like sports for me, right? I like watching esports, whatever. If that's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. I don't really like watching other people play sports. I watch football and whatnot. But John came over, and I was watching someone on YouTube, and John's like, that's where we're at nowadays, is people watching other people play video games. They're like, but it's like no different than people watching other people play sports. He's like, I don't remember what exactly he said. And I was like, well, I think it's the same thing. He's like, well, that's okay because we can agree to disagree. And that was the end of the conversation. There was no like heated, or it's like, okay, yeah, we can completely agree to disagree. Like, well, jiu-jitsu's taught us that, hey, it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? So, and you got anything else on that one?
No, I don't think so.
So. Number 4, appreciating the importance of physical and mental health. Kind of like what we just tied into on, I tied into the discipline and respect. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners learn to take care of their bodies and minds. Understanding the physical and mental health are essential for successful practice of the martial art. 100% agree. If you are not in a good headspace, you are going to feel it when you step on the mats. If you are having a hard day and you can't get out of your own head, you are going to get in your own way on the mats. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to separate on and off the mats. You have to be able to clear your head, stay in physical condition, because you can't come to class and do jiu-jitsu if you're injured and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even do this move because I was out partying all night and I fell down some stairs, or I'm completely hungover and I'm trying to do this on the mat,
Oh, absolutely. And, not being able to mentally be in the moment in class, we've all been there when the instructor's teaching and you're drifting off in a la-la land, and all of a sudden it's drilling time and you have no idea what they just went over.
Yep. Completely agree.
Yeah, it's interesting on the mental health part. I think a lot of people, like for myself, I'll listen to some like Stoicism podcasts in the morning, or I'll listen to something on my way to the gym, and that's really just to get me in the right mind frame to be ready to receive whatever the instructor's putting out.
Yeah, that's a good point, is having good mental health allows others to help you more. Because if you have a clear mind and you're not having all the outside chatter and outside noise of your life distracting you from what is going on in front of you, it's a whole lot easier to accept people wanting to help you, accepting criticism. Man, I'll tell you what, how hard is it to accept criticism when you're already having a bad day?
Oh, it's horrible.
You know what I mean?
Horrible.
Like, could you imagine if you were on the mats and you're absolutely sucking for the day, and your coach comes over and says, hey, you're absolutely sucking today.
Thank you for the confirmation.
You know what I mean? Like, in more or less terms, you know what I mean? But like, they come over and they're like, hey, you start feeling like they're nitpicking you, or, you're just not doing anything right. If you don't have strong mental health during that time, man, you could just get up and walk away. You know what I mean? Like, John and I both have had situations where we stopped training in the middle of class because someone's mental health like snapped on us. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. But
So it's hard.
yeah, and it's if you're going to be the one giving the advice or giving the correction, like I guess maybe figuring out the perfect time to also give it would be a good awareness.
Yeah.
I watch my daughter in her basketball games and everything, and I can see what she's doing wrong, during the game. And as soon as it's over, I gotta like bite my tongue because I want to start correcting like immediately, right? And it's just realizing that they're doing it from a good place, right? They can obviously see where you need the help.
Yeah. So as a coach, if you're listening to this and you're a coach out there, how do you approach the importance of physical and mental health when you're coaching someone?
Right.
I think hit us up on Instagram or in the YouTube comments on how this works for you, because and how do you preach it to your students? Because I feel like in class we focus so much on the physical aspect of jiu-jitsu, and now there's we obviously we're doing a whole episode about philosophy, but I do feel like there's a little bit more philosophy going into coaching jiu-jitsu, but it's definitely much further behind than I would like it to see. We do this stuff in class now where, it's like give a little bit of instruction. This is your goal. Get at it. Josh McKenzie calls it, designated winner or designated winner. And then there's other names out there for it. And I think that's a great thing for the mental health of people in jiu-jitsu, because it lets their mind figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, I think that's an early struggle, right? Especially if you're a new practitioner, you're going with whatever your coach or instructor tells you, like, and sometimes it's a little tough, right? Some people learn by, they need to experiment and they need to figure it out and they need to just listen to their body and go through the motions. So sometimes it's hard to be regimented and just listen to someone.
Right. Especially if you're sitting in this moment and you're like, man, they're showing me how to do this, but what if I were to do this?
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you that pathway of being able to explore and build that mental fortitude of like, okay, well, that's why it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I've done that in class. You're like, all right, I want to try this, and it does not work out, and you get crushed, and you're like, all right, never trying that one again. Lesson learned.
Right.
That avenue was not correct.
Right. So how does it play into real life, John?
Well, I think
that was a big groan.
Well, that's a tough one to think about, man. Like,
You don't think that there's correlations to you having physical and mental health, like knowing accepting the importance, like translating into
yeah, I think so. I think when you're in poor physical condition, like I'll go post surgery, right?
Yeah,
I had really poor mental health at the same time because the things I wanted to do I couldn't do.
Ooh, yeah.
It's like some of those days when you're like, man, I feel like going for a run. Like you really want to go for a run. You look outside and it's like thunderstorms, raining, snowing, blizzard, and then you're stuck inside and you just have all that energy you can't let out. Like that's how I felt. And it just, me being physically shit was affecting my mental capability.
Man, that's such a good
And then when
point.
it goes for so long, it's hard to get out of that cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can definitely see how they relate. And I think too, like, to me, yoga seems very much like a philosophy. I know it sounds weird to say it that way, but you're in like a real mental space when you're doing yoga. Like you're really expanding and, you're thinking about everything. That's why I feel like a lot of BJJ practitioners also do the yoga.
Yeah, and it definitely there's that mind-body connection that comes through jiu-jitsu or physical training, and I think also jiu-jitsu puts it in perspective how out of shape you actually are. You know what I mean? So you start thinking about life choices and how to improve your physical and mental health. Like jiu-jitsu makes you think about doing things outside of jiu-jitsu to help improve both of these.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a big takeaway too, is because you start to realize like, man, I'm going to go to class and during the warm-ups, my physical condition is so poor. My mental fortitude is so poor. I'm going to need to do something in order to improve this for class.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because how many times does your mind quit before your body?
Oh man, that's a good one.
You know what I mean? Like your mind will stop you well before your body does when you have poor mental.
Yeah, that's
health.
like when you beat yourself down, right? When it's all in your head and it's not a reality.
Right, you're like getting smashed inside control, and finally you just let them pass, or you just let them do whatever they're going to do. You know what I mean? Like instead of trying to build that mental strength to like I can get through this. I know I can do this, or build the physical strength outside of class to be able to execute some of these techniques. So those are just a few of the ways that accepting the importance of physical and mental health, how they tie in between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and life for us. You know what I mean? So John, what's the fifth and final one for today?
Achieving a sense of balance between mind and body. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu encourages practitioners to maintain a balance between the physical and mental aspects of the martial art, helping them to develop a holistic approach to life.
Preach.
Well, that's a big one. Holistic approach to life.
Yeah. The last couple of people we've had on, Dr. David and Dr. Toby, these guys have really reinforced this part of jiu-jitsu and philosophy, because they both make you think holistically about how you approach, whether it's competition, whether it's martial arts, or whatever it is in your life. And I think they bring up some great points. You know what I mean? Like Dr. Toby talks about like journaling, setting goals, doing all these things to help set yourself up for success before you even step foot on the mat or step foot in the cage or step foot to competition. And, it takes you looking at your whole life in order to implement these things to achieve what you want in jiu-jitsu.
Which helps your entire life, right?
Right.
Normally, you want to be healthier, right?
Yep.
Like you quickly learn, right? I am not going out for a bender. I won't be able to train. You quickly realize I'm not going to Taco Bell before class.
Man, I love Taco Bell though.
Because you're not going to be able to train, right? You start making all these positive changes.
Yep.
Which it encourages everything. You're going to have a happier life. You're going to have a happier spouse. You're going to have more energy. It starts affecting everything. Diet, everything.
Yeah, it really does, because now I do, intermittent fasting, and it helps out a lot with my jiu-jitsu. It helps me with energy and whatnot, and it's mainly because I wanted to do it for jiu-jitsu. And prime example, not eating before class, right? So that's another reason why I started doing it, because then I would, eat all my calories before jiu-jitsu, go to jiu-jitsu, and not have like a huge stomach on. Yeah. You're like thinking like, holy crap, I just
one knee on belly and it's over.
Yeah, knee on belly equals poop out butt. So.
Yeah, for sure.
No, but and I started to think about what I was eating before class too, which you want to have, I want to have like more of a healthier snack, so maybe some fruit, something light on my stomach, because I know if I don't during jiu-jitsu class, it's going to be I'm going to get the burps and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So just looking at my life holistically on, the physical side when I'm eating, trying to be active, trying not to have jiu-jitsu just as my only physical activity for the day, because I know what my body and my mind feels like when that's all I do. And even though it does help out a lot, it's not the only thing that you should be doing. And then that also helps improve my mental aspects of life as well.
Yeah, and like as far as philosophy, I mean, that's what it is, right? It's reflection. It's looking at choices, life choices, the decisions you make and what they affect. So, I mean, that's it, right? If you eat like shit, you're probably going to train like shit, and your jiu-jitsu is going to be shit. So you start making all these healthier choices to get all of that not to look like shit.
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else for that one. That's like the best part is that's a holistic look. If you do all these things shitty, then everything's gonna be shitty.
Yeah. So for those that are like, man, maybe you're like, look, I'm not into that philosophy shit. This is what I would tell you. If you're not training your mind to make better decisions and training your mind on reflection, I don't know how you're ever going to get better at that. So for myself, for my training, when I got a 20-minute walk into work in the morning, I listened to a philosophy podcast, right? And that's my training for my mental training for the day on how I can better reflect, on how I can better control my emotions so I can make better decisions.
What made you want to start doing that?
I think just life, right? Like, I read a lot. I hardly ever watch TV. I read a lot of books. And just, I like to pursue, it's almost like people watching. When you just can sit back and you can watch people make decisions and how they're going about their life. I wanted to be able to reflect on mine so I can see like, okay, it feels like every 10 years is a lifetime change for me.
Yeah.
I'm never the same person. So I just wanted to reflect on what brought about those changes, how can I dive into it, how could I look, and how can I make sure I make better choices moving forward.
Yeah.
Not that the ones I've made were bad, but I'd rather make better ones. So I just went down the rabbit hole, and I feel like people that journal in the morning, that's where they get that same training.
Yeah.
For me, it's just I like to listen to a podcast.
That's a great point, man. Yeah, absolutely. This was the first part of the 2-part episode for the 10 examples of how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and philosophy tie together and how we implement them in our lives. Just to recap it, number 1 was developing a non-violent approach to conflict resolution. Number 2,
learning to understand and accept loss.
Number 3 was fostering a sense of discipline and respect.
And number 4, appreciating the importance of physical and mental health.
And then finally, number 5, like we just went over, achieving a sense of balance between mind and body. So let us know what you guys think at home about the first 5, how you actually implement them in your life, if you do, and how you improve your mental and physical health through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So thank you guys so much for listening and watching at home. And remember, no other trucks here.
Those.
All right, guys. Peace.